Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a discussion video for you. Today we're going to be sort of rehashing or further analyzing, if you will, some of the comments and discussions surrounding the video I posted a few days ago called Things Only Knife Reviewers Care About. And in that video, I put the request out there on social media, Instagram and Facebook, for you guys to mention some things that knife reviewers tend to overemphasize or maybe even obsess about that really aren't that big of a deal. And I got a huge list, and it was actually pretty entertaining and really interesting to see all of that feedback coming in. I really enjoyed that process. I enjoyed making the video, and I enjoyed interacting with you guys in the comments to that video, and I hope that this will be similar, okay? Now, there are some things that I think need clarification, and so let me start off by pointing out that when you're watching a knife video, all right, not this one because it's not a review, but when you're watching a knife review, you have to keep in mind that, you know, as a reviewer, there's certain things you need to mention. And you know, essentially you need to talk about how the knife's made, you need to talk about the features, you need to talk about, you need to get into some of those details. And so for those of you who said, you know, please don't stop talking about, you know, the weight or the blade length or comfort in hand, ergonomics or something like that. Ergos, for those of you who really get bothered by that term. Don't worry, I don't think myself or any knife reviewer is just gonna leave that stuff out, okay? However, I do think the point is well taken that it's easy for one bad feature to sort of overshadow or put a dark cloud over a whole review when maybe that's not necessary. And as reviewers, and actually as viewers as well, okay, we need to be a little bit careful that we don't sort of get obsessed about something. You know, people have often commented on the blade to handle ratio on the Paramilitary 2. You've got a pretty big knife here, 8¼ inches, with only 3 inches of cutting edge. I guess it's a little more than 3 inches, but still, that's not good. All right, the biggest complaint I have about the Para 2 is I'm carrying a pretty decent sized knife. I could actually carry a knife that was quite a bit smaller and get more cutting edge out of it and therefore more utility, okay? So just because there's one feature that is not all that it could be, a knife is not totally ruined, all right? So reviewers do that for sure, but guess what? Viewers do it as well, all right? There's no question that I'm guilty from time to time of, for example, getting hung up on, I can think of the Kaiser Dorado. That thing is the ugliest knife I've ever seen. And so in my review, it was hard for me to say anything good about that knife because every time I looked at it, I just thought, this thing makes me want to gag. It's horrible, all right? But the fact is, every single aspect of that knife in terms of performance was great. It felt good in hand. It cut really well. Everything in terms of how it actually functioned was phenomenal. But I still hate it, okay? Because it's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And so it's easy for me to let that sort of overshadow a whole video. The same is true of size. You know, knives that I really like, but they're too small for me, that bothers me because I want to own this knife. I'm like, I want to buy this, I want to own it, I want to keep it in my collection, but I can't use and carry on a consistent basis a knife that's under 8 inches overall. Right, and really, you know, 8¼ to 8½, really 8¼ and above is sort of where I like it to be, up to about 9 inches. And so a knife that's smaller, you know, every time I think of how amazing it is, the first thing that pops into my mind is, but it's too small. So you really can't get the full enjoyment that you want to get out of it. All right, so that's, I know we get hung up on things. I know I get hung up on things. I'm not debating that at all. Now, let me make the opposite point, and that is, you guys as viewers get hung up on things. I can't tell you how many reviews I have where, you know, I've given a very positive review and I think, and I say, hey, I really like this knife. But then in the comments, all I get is you guys talking about this one aspect that I brought up. You know, maybe I said, I don't know, the lanyard hole seems poorly placed. And all the comments will be is, yeah, man, this knife sucks. It's got that stupid lanyard hole. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Were you listening at all? I said the knife was awesome. There's just one minor little issue here. Okay, so, well, I'm happy to bear some of the guilt and some of the problem for overemphasizing a particular point. I have to say that some of you guys, as as viewers do it as well. Here is a perfect example. So the Benchmade Freak, this is one of my favorite Benchmades. In fact, it's one of my favorite EDC knives. I would highly, highly recommend it. But it has this rubberized coating on the handle. And a lot of people who watched this video, they only noticed one thing, and that was it has a rubberized coating. Right? And my take on it was, hey, the rubberized coating is comfortable. It doesn't seem to stop from going into the pocket. I don't love it, but everything else about this knife is phenomenal. All right. In the comments, and still I think the general perception of this knife is often that, you know, it could have been a decent knife, but it's got that stupid rubberized coating. And I'm like, no, it's a good knife. It's an awesome knife. In fact, it would have been slightly better without the rubberized coating, but it doesn't ruin it, right? And I don't think we should throw it away. And so, while there's certainly some blame to go to reviewers for overly obsessing about one particular feature or aspect of a knife, sometimes viewers do the same thing. They get hung up on a particular thing. All right, now, the next point that I want to make here is one that I think kind of goes to a bit of the psychology of knife reviews and watching knife reviews. This Curtis F3 is one of my favorite knives. I adore this knife. I love it. All right. And yes, there's a certain amount of emotional investment that I have in this knife. All right. Guess what that means? When I hear somebody talking about how much they hate the Curtis F3, my thought is, what is wrong with this person? Right? This is an epically good knife. It is beautiful. It is functional. It's tough. It's got an awesome blade. It's got awesome materials. It's well built. Like, what more could they want? And granted, there are some things that they could want, okay? The ergos are one of the things that is not perfect about this knife. Now, I never have a problem with it. I kind of let it land there, or I choke up and do this. All right, but I do know there's people who kind of try to squeeze these two fingers into this choil and go, yeah, it's not right. This kind of lands right on my finger, and it doesn't work as well as I wanted. And that's a legitimate complaint. But here's what I think happens. All right, someone has this knife, and when a reviewer says it's not comfortable in hand, they go, it's comfortable to my hand. The only the only reasonable explanation could be that this reviewer is a complete idiot and not worth listening to. You know, well, that could be, or it could also be that you're just a little overly emotionally invested in your knife, okay? It's just kind of slightly possible, all right? And here's a perfect example. The Line Steel SR11 is such a cool looking knife, and a lot of people really like it, but most reviewers, myself included, said it's too slippery. I really had an issue, you know, flipping and actuating the knife, even using the knife, because it was just too slippery. And so, you know, I complained about that. And, you know, you would, as would be expected, people who really love it kind of weigh in the comments and go, oh, you're an idiot. You're such a jerk. Why did you say this was a bad knife? This is the best knife that's ever been made. How could you disparage the most awesome knife that's ever existed? Okay. And so you're going to get some of that. And I think some of the comments on my initial question reflected a certain amount of frustration with reviewers who are complaining about a knife that you really, really like. All right. Now, let's come back very quickly and very, very briefly to another point here, and that is you have to remember that reviewers are making videos. I don't know why I keep kicking this. I'm in an awkward position because my leg, I've got some kind of, I've hurt it some way, and so I'm sitting in an awkward position, so I keep bumping the camera. Anyway, you have to think about what reviewers are trying to do. Okay, if someone reviews a Curtis F3 and doesn't talk about the fact that it's stinking heavy, because it is, they haven't done a very good review, all right? And furthermore, if they're a reviewer who makes a big issue out of weight, you know, one of their preferences is for knives that are a little bit lighter, well, guess what? When they say, hey, this knife is too heavy to carry around all the time, they've got a legitimate point, all right? Do I agree with them? No. But can I be objective enough for a moment, even though I love this knife, to say, okay, I'll grant you, it is overly heavy. Okay, yes, I can. All right, so what knife reviewers are trying to do is give you the details about a knife and their thoughts about them. I think the term review implies a certain amount of analysis. Okay, so, yeah, could a person, put this on camera, give you the size, weight, tell you what it's made out of, and say, there you go, that's the Curtis F3. Well, yeah, but that wouldn't be a review. Okay, I don't know what it would be. It would just be sort of a sharing time, I guess. A review is going to have some reflection on whether or not it's well done. Okay, whether it does the things that we need it to do, and it does them well. Okay, so finally, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the last thing that I want to share with you guys here, and that is, what am I looking for? When I do a knife review, how do I decide whether the knife is any good or not? How do I decide whether I'm going to tell you guys, yeah, go out and buy this, or you should avoid it? And it's very simple. Here's what I want, all right? I want this knife to cut stuff, okay? So that means blade steel, edge geometry, a little bit about sharp inside a box, even though I don't make a big thing out of that because I'm going to sharpen all my knives anyway. But those things need to be talked about because they relate to whether or not the knife can cut stuff. All right, so yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Next, I want it to go in and out of pocket quickly and easily, right? And I want it to be comfortable while I'm walking around with it in my pocket. And so we need to make some comment about whether or not it does what it's supposed to do in that regard. Okay, I want it to open and close quickly and easily, and of course when I want it to. So, this is a matter of lock strength. A weak lock, is there some chance that that a knife could close when I don't want it to close? Man, if there's a possibility of that, I need to talk about it in the review. All right. And so, yeah, is there less chance of that happening on this knife than this knife or this knife? Yes. All right. So you kind of got to at least make mention of it. So I want it to close. I want it to close quickly, easily, and comfortably, right? If a knife is really, really difficult to open and close, if it has a lot of lock stick, if the lock cuts into my finger every time I go to use it, if I can't get my thumb in there to actuate the lock bar, okay, those things I need to mention because the knife now doesn't open and close quickly and easily when I want it to. And I want it to stay in my hand comfortably and reliably. So what I mean by that is, if I'm working with this, right, if I'm doing something important, I want to know that I can get a good grip on this and I can get some work done without worrying about, number one, it being uncomfortable to do prolonged levels of work, and number two, worrying about it slipping out of my hand. And so, how comfortable this knife is in hand and how grippy it is in hand, again, are things we have to talk about. And really, that's about it. Okay, those are the main things I'm looking for. Outside of that, there are some details that may be on a higher end knife, centering or something like that. I may care about fit and finish, but the main things that I'm going to care about are the ones I just outlined. Does it cut stuff? Does it go in and out of my pocket when I want it to? Does it open and close easily and quickly and stay opened or closed, whichever one I want it to be? And does it stay in my hand comfortably, right? If it does those things, it's a good knife and it's going to get a good review. If it doesn't do those things, then yeah, there's an issue. All right. Now, I know blade play is something that doesn't fit into any of those categories that I kind of add for myself. And I think most of us care about that because it does speak to quality, as does centering and a few other things. But really, those 4 simple points are the main ones that I'm concerned about when I'm doing a knife review. And I suspect those are the same points that most reviewers are concerned about. All right, so there you go, guys. I'd love to hear any further comments on this. I'd love to hear your reaction. Does this explanation, sort of make sense to you? Does it hold water, or do you think I'm totally out to lunch? Which, if you do, that's great. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon.